School districts are required to have a policy regarding bullying, but are these policies being enforced? I'm Jill Horner. This is Comcast Newsmakers. With me is Pennsylvania State Representative Dan Truitt. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
We're talking about House Bill 156, or what's called the Pennsylvania Safe Schools Act. Let's talk a little bit about current policy when it comes to school districts. They're required to post their rules regarding bullying on their websites.
Right, and they're also required to send an annual report to the Department of Education to indicate how many incidents of bullying they've had in their districts. But unfortunately, over 200 school districts last year reported no incidents at all. And that indicates to me that we have a problem either with the definition of bullying or with making it easy enough for school districts to track and report these incidents.
And let's focus on what your legislation would do. Again, it's House Bill 156. You say you want to create a more clear definition of bullying.
Right, just to make it so that when someone sees an incident or an incident is reported to them, they can distinguish between what is true bullying and what's just a one-time incident on the playground that's not bullying. And then if they do determine that something is bullying, then they should enter it into a system that keeps track of that incident and make sure that there's some kind of follow-up taking place.
So essentially what you're talking about is an online portal for reporting incidents.
Exactly. If a student comes to a teacher or administrator and says that they're being picked on the playground, that teacher or administrator would enter information about that incident into the computer, and the computer would follow up by sending an email to the person at that school who's responsible for investigations and follow-up.
So is the goal to potentially have a more accurate accounting of how many incidents are occurring?
Absolutely, and also just to make sure that some action takes place, even if it's as simple as determining, no, this wasn't an incident of bullying, or maybe something more extensive has to be done to follow up.
Reporting incidents is one thing,
right?
But what about the follow-up? Will schools be required to have a follow-up with this legislation if incidents are sent to them via email through this portal?
Yeah, they're required. Their policy will have to indicate what kind of follow-up might take place, but it's all really going to be left to the discretion of professional educators. We don't want this to lead to zero tolerance policies that lead to some of the silly stories that we see in the news about good kids being expelled or suspended for minor incidents.
So the idea is to report incidents, follow up on these incidents, but still have the discretion at a local level?
That's correct. We don't want to take away local control. Part of the bill requires the Department of Education to develop a model policy on bullying, but it lets the school district decide whether to adopt that model policy or develop a similar policy of their own. It requires them to have some training for teachers so they know how to identify bullying and how to report it with the system, but it leaves it to their discretion that they can use the online training provided by the department or they can develop their own training. We don't like to take away local control.
Are you hoping that this, one, gives a more accurate accounting of the volume of bullying incidents, and two, potentially even works to reduce the amount of bullying overall?
Exactly. I'm an engineer. I always believe that in order to solve a problem, you have to first be able to measure it, and I don't think we're getting anywhere near an accurate measurement at this time.
What kind of support are you getting for this legislation?
Lots of support. We're closing in on 80 co-sponsors out in Harrisburg. We've got dozens of outside groups supporting us. The bill really has a lot of traction, and I'm hopeful that we can get it past the goal line sometime this session. And
with just a few seconds left, but what are you hearing from school districts themselves?
Some of them, they come to me and they'll say things like, well, we already have a good bullying policy, why do we need this? And then I'll pull up the data and show them that, well, actually, you guys only reported 1 or 2 incidents of bullying last year, and it changes their perspective, and they realize we do need to make things a little bit better.
Come back, give us an update.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. We've been talking with Pennsylvania State Representative Dan Truitt. I'm Jill Horner.